Good evening, everybody. I want to welcome you here to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So we're here to do my Wednesday night favorites. And I've chosen to do kind of a sequel to last week's. We did the my top 10 bands that I think are underrated. We did that last week, which was enjoyable. I didn't mind doing that one because you get to talk about bands you love that you think should have been better. This one's going to be a little bit tougher, so we're doing a sequel, so we're doing kind of the opposite. So these are my top 10 favorite bands that I think are overrated. Now, I had to qualify this a bit because I didn't want to do a list of 10 bands that I don't like. I've already kind of done that. I don't really want to do that anymore because, first of all, you got to revisit those bands that I don't really want to. Second of all, you got to listen to their albums. I don't really want to do that. And to be honest, some of the bands that I think are overrated, like the bands I don't like that I think are overrated, I don't have any albums from them, so I don't see the point to doing that. So I chose, for this one, I chose 10 bands that I do like that I still think are a bit overrated. And so the criteria for the bands I picked is I had to be familiar with them. Can't be just a band like, I originally thought about putting Toto in there, but I'm only really familiar with a few songs and maybe an album by Toto. I don't really think it's fair to put them on a list when you haven't even really given them a real fair chance. So I decided that they had to be familiar. They had to be bands that I had listened to over the years, that I knew enough about, that I felt like I could make an honest assessment. The other thing, they had to be bands I liked. All 10 of these bands I do like. And the other criteria I kind of wanted to put in here is they had to be fairly well known. People have to know who they are. I mean, I could pick bands that there's a couple of European bands that are, I thought, they're not bands I listen to, and some people might not even know who they are, so why bother putting them in there? So I chosen 10 bands that I like, I'm familiar with, who are fairly well known, who are my top 10 bands that I think are overrated. And I kind of put them in an order that I think they're the most overrated. So the most overrated one's going to be number 1. The least overrated one is going to be number 10. I'm already know I'm going to take some huge hits for these, but I just harken back to George Meade when he did the thing with the King Crimson, and everybody just jumped down his throat about it. But you know what? If you don't like something, you don't like something. But in this case, I do like all of these bands. I even actually tried to pick albums that I liked by these bands because I want to give the impression that I do like these bands, but I just think that generally speaking, they're overrated. They're not as good as people think they are, and that is the bottom line here. So okay, so the first one is a band that I discovered with this album. I now have 4 of their albums, and I heard a lot about them, how they got that kind of Zeppelin sound to them, how their vocalist is fantastic, how if you really like this kind of sound, you'll really love these guys. They're really great. They're the next Led Zeppelin. And I don't find them to be that way. I do like this. I like this particular album. We're talking about the Tea Party here. Edge of Twilight is the album here. I have 3 other albums. I haven't warmed up to the other 3 albums very much. And I really don't think these guys are as good as people think they are. So they're going to come in at number 10 of overrated bands. Number 9 will probably come as a shock to some people, but I like their first album. I like their second album. I like the one that I'm listening to now. I like them all. But I always thought that this band, people compared this band to being like right next to the Beatles. They're the most influential band next to the Beatles. And they clearly are not. They clearly are overrated, and people think far more highly of their abilities than I do. I think they're great for what they are. I think they're a good band. If you take them as they are with their albums, they're a great band. But to say that they're next to the Beatles, that's a great overstatement, and we're talking about the Doors here. Number 9 of the overrated bands, the Doors. The next one up, I actually really like this album, so I chose it, and I really like the cover. I think it's one of the best covers. This is one of their better albums as well. They have a lot of good albums. But again, people say this is one of the great metal bands of its time, and I really don't think it is. Whitesnake. I think they're overrated. I think they're a good metal band, but to put them in the same breath as their counterparts, Deep Purple, is just, to me, a little bit on the ludicrous side. So that's number 8. Number 7. This is going to upset some people. Probably will upset Ben, which I'm sorry if it does. It's not meant to. And I picked my favorite album by them, which I really love. I think this is a great album. They've got other stuff that's really great. But again, this band is one of those bands that people think is the best band of all time. They're better than Zeppelin. They're better than this. They may be next to the Beatles. I don't think so. And we're talking about Queen. Yes, they're a great band. Yes, they've had some fantastic albums. Some of the great rock songs. But they've got a lot of crap too. Sorry. They do. There's a lot of crap in their discography. And I really don't think the level that this band has been placed, they're now considered one of the most iconic bands of all time. I don't think they are in that league. I don't think they're in the top 20 bands of all time, not alone the top 2 or 3. And I do love them. I do like their music quite a bit. It's always kind of irked me, though, that people put them where they put them. Anyways, maybe if they didn't put them anywhere, if they just ignored them, I'd even be more pissed. Who knows? Anyways, Queen coming here at number 7. Number 6, maybe not as overrated as they once were. I always thought they were overrated when I was listening to them. I like their music. It's a nice interlude. It's kind of poppy. It's got a little bit of that hard stuff to it. But people used to say this is a great hard rock band. I don't think they're that great. I don't think they're as great as people say they are. We're talking about Foreigner. And I even chose Double Vision, which is another great album. But this is a band that is still making albums. Well, I know they're not making albums, but they're still touring. Although I don't think there's anybody left in the band now, which really begs me to say, are they really that great? No. Foreigner. Number 6. Number 7. This is a band that has a lot of really big albums, a lot of attention. They're a very different sounding band than a lot. They have a little show. A lot of people love them, think that they're one of the great bands, one of the top 5 or 6 bands in history. I don't think they make the top 50 myself. And we're talking about ZZ Top. Yeah, good band. And particularly, I like some of their albums. This is the only one I actually have from them. But they have a lot of good songs, really catchy. They're kind of like the Dire Straits to me. They got a lot of that great stuff that's on the radio. But I don't think they're as big as people think they are. Next up is a band that at one time I loathed this band, but I've grown to respect them. I think they have a lot of musicality, a lot of talent. They put out a ton of pop stuff. They argue a lot amongst each other still, but when it all comes down to it, people have got them way up here and they don't deserve it. I don't think they do it. I think they're overrated, and I'm talking about Journey. And I actually like this album, by the way. So Journey coming in at number 4. Well, I know I've pissed off a lot of people, but now it's going to get really pissed off. The next band up is a band that I love their early stuff. I can't stand their later stuff. The middle stuff I'm okay with. Some of the albums that came out when they started to move towards that sound, I didn't mind. But a lot of the later stuff's just plain garbage. They get a lot of notoriety for being right up there with some of the great rock bands of all time. I don't think they belong there. I think they're a good band. I think they're a band that could make the top 20, but then again, I think they might not either. So Aerosmith, number 3. I'm not shy to say it. I love this album. They've got other albums I have that I love as well, but I still think these are like a 25, maybe 20, 30, top 25, top 30 band, maybe. Not definitely up at the top of the heap. Okay, the next guy, he's not really a band, of course, but he had two fantastic albums. His first two albums were fantastic. Then he did a live album, and then he did another album that wasn't too bad. And then from that point on, I could care less. But I hear about how he's the greatest, he's the heavy metal god and all this stuff, and I don't think he is. It's Ozzy Osbourne. Do I like him? Yes, absolutely I like Ozzy. I love the stuff he did with Sabbath. I love this album. I love Diary of a Madman. After that, I'm kind of out of it. But I still think that people have made this guy too iconic. He doesn't really deserve it based on what he's done since Randy Rhoads left. He's done, basically, there's not really much out there that I like by him. Next up, number one. Yeah, I'm going to take some hits from this. I have 4 or 5 of their albums. I've listened to them. I picked the one I think is the best. I think a lot of people find this to be one of the best albums by them as well. That they're iconic. They're in the Hall of Fame. A lot of people say they're the greatest of all time for their genre. Metallica. I don't think so. I think they're grossly overrated, especially over the last couple of decades. I think I just don't think they're that great. Like, they're mediocre at best. I actually seen these guys. They're one of the few bands I've actually seen. And they weren't bad, but I don't think, a lot of people put this band as like right up there with among the best bands of all time. I don't see it. I don't agree with it. I do like this album, and I do like their stuff. I've been listening to it more and more over the last year or so. I've grown to like at least the early stuff, and that's because it was recommended. People told me to stay away from the later stuff, so I did. I've gone with the earlier stuff, and I've grown to like this. I like this album, but I still think this band is grossly overrated, and to me, they easily win the title of most overrated band of all time. So I know a lot of you are going to hate me for all this. I'm sorry. It's not my desire to have that happen. People ask me who are the most overrated bands, and there are other bands that I can't stand, I think are more overrated than these bands, but I'm not doing a list on bands I don't like. What would be the point, really? So I'm not going to reiterate that again. I want to make it clear. I like all of these bands, every single one of them. Even probably the one I like the least is probably this one, Journey. I like them the least of all these bands, but I still like them. That's the point. Most of these bands I love. Quite a few of them I love. The Doors, I love them. Queen, I love them. We could go through here, look at them all. Aerosmith, I love, at least the early stuff I do. And even Ozzy, I love. But I still think they're overrated, all of them. So anyways, that's the list. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want, I'll just reiterate them all just once. Did I reiterate them? I don't think I did. Metallica, number 1. Ozzy, number 2. Aerosmith, number 3. Journey, number 4. ZZ Top, number 5. Foreigner, number 6. Queen, number 7. Whitesnake, number 8. The Doors, number 9. And last but not least, the Tea Party at number 10. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Enjoy it for what it's worth. It's just us talking about some more rock albums. Please hit the like and subscribe. If you got comments in the comment section, I'm sure I'll get lots. Put them down there. If you want to give your list of bands that you think are overrated, that's fine too. If you want to put the ones you hate, you can do that. I decided I would pick ones I did like a lot. I just thought they were overrated. And so please hit the notification bell. And we'll be back next week on favorites with another. I think we're going to be doing a 25. I'm not 100% sure, but maybe a 25, or I may go with a 5, depending on how my job goes, how busy it is. I might have time for one large one if I can. Anyways, we will see you then. Take care and have yourself a good evening. Bye.